Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we're going to be talking about the second self-titled album from Ty Segall. You know, it seems like Ty Segall has done more in the past 10 years than several artists do in their entire careers. Starting from the pits of garage rock before exploding towards abrasive experimental lo-fi, to the garish trappings of old school glam rock, and a whirlwind of noisy psychedelia in between. He doesn't so much burn through musical genres so much as pick up additional layers and ideas wherever he ventures, piling them into a gleefully nihilistic pot that would eventually wear out some of its welcome if it wasn't so captivating and conceptual in a twisted way. Now, I've already covered two of his albums on this show, neither quite being my favorites of his assorted work. Those would be the more acoustic and yet gorgeously melodic Sleeper, and the absolutely insane project he did under the Ty Segall band, Slaughterhouse. Now, his 2014 album project, Manipulator, it was probably his most ornate affair. His 2016 album, Emotional Mugger, his most ugly and alien, both firmly grounded in some really unsettling conceptual territory that lent to some really good songs, but not quite great albums as a whole. And so I wasn't entirely surprised that he was opening up 2017 with a self-titled album, the second of his career, reportedly rounding up some of his old band to compile all his accumulated ideas. But it was a name in the production credits that really caught my eye. Legendary producer and professional curmudgeon Steve Albini. Make no mistake, his name alone tends to do a lot to rope me into an album, so you can bet if Ty Segall was pushing this band together for a wild recording, it would probably cut really hard. So you can bet I really wanted to hear this. So what does Ty Segall deliver? Well, honestly, I was pretty underwhelmed with this release. And that's the last thing I wanted to say about an album that's clearly aiming to be a looser, almost jam band inspired album. I'm not gonna say it's a regression per se. Ty Segall is still a sharp enough writer and composer that even if this was an album aiming for a looser style, he still rings out some really good hooks, but it's nowhere near as rough-edged or abrasive as I was hoping for. And without stronger thematic consistency, well, it feels like he threw his conventional sound on the past couple albums into a melting pot to see what would come out. And while there's a fair amount that's good and you can like, there's not a lot of standouts, and that's kind of disappointing. And that's honestly a bizarre thing for me to say when you hear that Ty Segall, he was actually looking to make this more of a song-driven project, give greater focus to individual tracks in order to refine the melodic songwriting. So, okay, let's start with that. One thing that I've always admired about Ty Segall is that he does place more of a focus on melodic composition, and doesn't just feel the need to let the noisy riffs seethe without a decent tune, and that's as true here as it always is. But you know, I can't be the only one who, when listening to Freedom, started to get flashbacks of the opening riffs of Threshold, a lo-fi track that Beck wrote for the Scott Pilgrim soundtrack, because the riffs are almost identical. Of course, Threshold actually had its transitions come together and work, which isn't something I can really say about Freedom, which is a little bit bizarre considering Ty Segall followed that song with Warm Hands Freedom Return, and the many transitions that occurred over that song's 10-minute length, they were actually handled pretty well. But that unfortunately leads to the second issue, and that this album can kind of start to meander, especially when you encounter songs that are more underwritten than I would otherwise expect. Now, don't get me wrong, I like Warm Hands Freedom Return for the most part, but you can't tell me that around the 5-minute mark, it doesn't start to lose some of the plot as it ebbs back and forth. Again, the tones are very appealing, but it's got the feel of a laid-back jam session that's gonna take its sweet time getting back to the actual point, and that's different for Ty Segall. But again, that softer feel overall is consistent across the project. More piano and mid-tempo delivery and cadence and flow, complete with the cooing vocal overdubs that bear more than a passing wink back to T-Rex's softer songs, or even the Beatles at a couple points. And again, I'm not gonna say this is precisely a bad thing. The sweeter tunes, they're certainly there, like the sandy acoustics of Orange Color Queen and Take Care to Comb Your Hair. That leads to some pretty great fuzzy solos that I liked, and the odd Bowie feel and the melodic composition and vocals that led to the hook on Papers, that mostly worked for me. But I also feel like an opportunity was missed with this. Steve Albini's production is as poised and clear as always, but you know, that's a golden opportunity for the rougher garage tones on songs like Break a Guitar and The Only One to really sizzle, and it feels like the smoother tones for the quieter pieces just don't satisfy in the same way, especially on songs like Papers that are relying on the muted piano for the majority of the melodic tone. Of course, on the flip side of that, you've got the noise of Thank You Mr. K. That would seem to be a great case taste for Albini, but with the way the demented guitar melodies are layered, it feels like an extra from Emotional Mugger and not one of my favorites. And that's before the song stops mid-song to literally inject the sounds of a shattering porcelain toilet before resuming into a delirious whirl of piano, riffing, and a melody that unfortunately kind of grated on my nerves. So, okay, this is where we come around to the content. I don't know what to tell you, folks. It's not bad writing, but one of Ty Segall's greatest underappreciated strengths is the ability to pull together some fascinating conceptual themes with a distinctly twisted worldview that's really unique. And a big hidden benefit to this is that it can make songs add up to a lot more than their individual parts. And yet, without it, the writing is catchy and detailed and certainly textured and unique, but it doesn't quite rise beyond that. If I'm gonna find a very loose theme, it's in cutting loose and casting aside fear to do whatever you want, but all Ty Segall seems to really do is indulge in similar human venality that's filled all of his albums. It can be reckless, like on Break a Guitar or Freedom, or utterly manic, like on Thank You, Mr. K, or just kind of petty, like on Talkin', or the fusion of it all together on Warm Hands, Freedom Return, which seems to be Ty Segall's opportunity to enact some form of twisted revenge that seems to involve prostitution. It's not entirely clear, but then he follows it with the sweet wistfulness of Take Care to Comb Your Hair, or just plain stoned out love on Orange Color Queen. And if you could pull anything from it, his freedom is being able to make any choice and go any direction, good and bad. But that's not so much a theme as it is an artistic direction, and I'm not convinced that any of these tracks are as immediately strong as his best to stand on their own regardless. And in a weird way, that's where I fall on this album as a whole. It's not bad. Ty Segall has such a distinctive artistic presence with a nimble grasp on melody that even when the songs aren't great, I can't help but get them stuck in my head, but I've heard him touch on similar sounds elsewhere better, which leaves this project feeling a little like a watered-down sampler platter. And really, when you collaborate with a legendary producer and the songs don't have more punch or textured impact, I can't help but leave a little bit disappointed. As such, I'm thinking a light 6 out of 10, but only a recommendation if this is your first Ty Segall project or are a diehard fan and you're curious for more. Beyond that, Manipulator, Slaughterhouse, Sleeper, even Emotional Mugger, they're a lot more interesting projects, even if I don't quite like them in the same way. And I hope that Ty Segall returns to that sort of more conceptual work soon. From interviews, I've heard that he's already got that next album nearly done, so hey, only a matter of time. So hey, thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. I had a link down in the description below if you guys want to buy the album, but beyond that, if you guys have other opinions, like if you guys are much more of a fan of this than I am, there's the poll, you can tell me there. Beyond that, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. And beyond that, if you guys want to get more involved in my schedule, which is as overloaded as it is, the link to my Patreon is right there. A couple times a week, you guys get to vote on albums coming up, and on Saturdays, you guys, the higher Patreon levels, get to add records or even movies to my schedule. More details are in the link right there, but until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.